Hey guys, welcome to the Good Culture podcast. So excited to have you guys here and to discuss faith and how it compels us to move in the world. So I just want to put a question out on the table. What is your faith and what is beautiful about it?
I identify as Jewish, and there's a lot that I find beautiful about that faith. I don't even know where to start, but I think the easiest place to begin would be the Jewish values. I went to temple growing up my whole life, so it's something that we spent a lot of time learning about. I think the biggest one that stands out to me would be Tikkun Olam, and that means repair the world. So through that and through Judaism, I've done a lot for Tikkun Olam, like replanting trees, doing leadership opportunities. I've helped people that are impoverished communities. There's all kinds of things I can go with that. And then another thing that stands out to me the most would be acceptance. I think something I find the most beautiful about Judaism is that there's no one way to be Jewish. So, for example, for me, I consider myself to be a cultural Jew. So that means that I don't necessarily believe in everything that the Torah tells, or it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a religious Jew. I find myself to be more of a cultural Jew. So for me, it has more to do with the culture, the heritage, the history. I have connections to the Holocaust, and so another reason that Judaism is so important to me is to keep that family history alive, and that's just so powerful to me. Another example would be my brother. My brother doesn't really identify as Jewish. He doesn't really see himself as any religion, and he went through something that was a little bit stressful for him a couple years ago. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because that's his business, but the Jewish community was very welcoming toward that and with him, and they were very they really helped him get through that hard process and that hard area of his life. So I just feel like Judaism is very accepting and very it's always a shoulder to lean on. So that's something else for me. And then another thing that I find really beautiful about Judaism is that you don't have to take the Torah literally, or any of the laws, any of what is written down literally. It's there for you to have discussions about it and to analyze what it says and to interpret it in your own way. And you will never be turned away for that. You always have someplace that's home. The people that I've met through Judaism have just been so powerful for me. And it's a place where I can kind of figure out what Judaism means to me and know that I will never be turned away for that.
My name is Isaac Compels Jr. I'm a Christian, and one thing that's beautiful about Christianity for me would be the community feeling. Uh, going from at my church and meeting up with other churches and doing events, stuff like that. That's so cool to see people come together and have the same goal and want to get better and be closer to God. That's cool. Another thing I would say is how Christianity is getting injected into the world. I went to a lot of Christian camps growing up, and to see other kids my age who want to be closer to God, stuff that's cool, because I don't know where you're from, but I'm from Christianity, or any religion is not really that popular, and kids, it's usually the adults and stuff. So seeing kids being closer to God and stuff like that, that's pretty cool.
So I'm Jewish, and one aside from the biblical and from the scriptural and in the written, I think the Jewish people are one of the most beautiful things to me, and the Jewish history. I'm a big fan of history, and the fact that we can go back, we have archaeological sites, we have artifacts, we have all these things from thousands and thousands of years of rich history that has stuck around, that has developed to this day. The ancient Egyptians are no more. The Jewish people are still here. Not only are we here, we're everywhere in the world and developing unique and beautiful Jewish cultures across the world. No matter where you are, adapting native traditions from different areas where Jews found themselves settling, like the Jewish communities of India or the Kaifeng Jews in China, all embrace parts of the local culture while maintaining a distinctly Jewish identity and producing beautiful works of art and stories, literature, clothing, all of these things that make a people, and that I guess I want to say symbiosis of faith and culture, I think, is one of the most beautiful things about the Jewish tradition.
So I'm a Christian, and what I find really beautiful about my faith is just a love that is compelled by my faith, and so I think people oftentimes they might know it's very cheesy to say Jesus is love, but I think for me, that's really beautiful to see, because you will see people, doing very sacrificial things to show love, because that is part of their faith and that is part of what they believe. And whether that's to, like other fellow Christians, or to just people in general, and just creating community and just showing that very deep love and deep and sincere love. That's something that's really beautiful about my faith. Yeah.
So religion can be such a taboo word. Why do you think that is?
So I'll hop onto this and say that I think religion as a taboo word is a relatively new thing. I mean, it's not super new, but in the last, couple decades, it's really mounted to be quite a taboo thing to either, claim religiosity or discuss it in public settings. And I think a lot of that has roots in the politicization of religion. And that's a big thing that I want people to look at faith for what it's meant to be, which is something that's personal, something that, it can create community, bonds people to each other, and enlightens the soul and makes people strive for more, not something that should be used to dictate what people outside of that group, should be doing or be setting policy. It's just a little bit irresponsible, I think, to be bringing religion and government super close together. And that's resulted in religion becoming a bit of a taboo, because now it has so many associations with, people trying to dictate how you should think and what you should do, instead of being personal and inspiring and hopeful.
Yeah, I love what you said about like faith being like personal and being like, the person but with the faith, instead of like the faith as an institution, or the religion as an institution. Because I think the taboo really comes from when people see, oh, you're acting like in this way as like a big, like an organization, and you put this label of like religion on it, or like faith on it, when really it's not what compels you in your personal faith. And I resonate with what you said.
For me, I would say I think people have religion and faith backwards. I think people think it's so much as like you said, like a group. I think if most people understood that it's really about like the relationship you have, I think that's how they would like come to accept and stuff like that. And I feel like people have a hard time making choices, and so having to pick between being a Christian, being a Jew, I feel like they have a hard time, and so they just try to shy away from it rather than like accept it and like pick what they want to.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about religion being a taboo ever since, I guess, when government uses religion as a way to enforce policies or tell people what they should or should not do. I think that conversation that's come up, at least recently, like you were saying, has been what's caused that taboo and what's caused it to kind of become a trigger word, like something uncomfortable for people to talk about their religion and what that means to them. And I think a lot of people also assume that when you say that you follow a certain religion, that it means that you follow everything that religion says, and that there's no gray area in between. And then you're almost afraid to say that, hey, I'm this religion, because you don't want people to make assumptions about what you believe or what your values are. But,
absolutely.
To add on top of that, I think a lot of times, like even like with what you were saying, Michael, about like politics being linked into all this, like people already have an idea of what a certain faith background is, like especially in the United States, like Christianity can be this kind of identity. And like you were saying, Abigail, it's like people don't want to be necessarily tied to that, so they don't necessarily like bring that up, but it's just really difficult, because you have to sort of like be prepared to explain, because people have conceptions already, and that's like the taboo part.
I also think social media plays a huge factor. Like when certain celebrities become huge on social media and they're promoting their religion, which is totally fine, but when they're becoming super big and promoting their religion, and then it kind of almost becomes like an association with that religion for anybody else, or if they say that they believe this in the name of that religion, then people who also follow that religion feel like, because this person has put such a like symbol on that, then it kind of can push people away from acknowledging like what their religion and what their values are.
It's such an effect of generalizations at the core of it, and it affects every religion, I think, whether you're one of the Abrahamic faiths or you're a follower of a different religion, every group is going to have some subsection that's doing hurtful things, that's doing or purporting policy or ideas that many people might not agree with. And then the people who don't agree with that, they're going to see that and go, all right, that's everybody across the board. And it hurts individuals, because now you're faced with having to defend. I feel like, at least in my position, I feel like sometimes you have to defend your faith and your beliefs in something that you think is really beautiful, because it's been co-opted. The idea of it has been co-opted by groups that are not pushing love, that are not pushing, acceptance and beauty.
As you were speaking, I was thinking, we just all really need so much opportunity to learn about other faiths, and to hear from real people what faith means to them and what it is, instead of knowing from social media or from this generalized culture, or just huge labels, institutional labels like that. I think just having the opportunity to learn is so important.
So Irene, I'd like to ask you, do you think that society still needs religion?
That's a really good question. So recently for my birthday, I actually went to the Museum of the Bible in DC, and they had this really cool exhibit. It's about science and religion, and I think that when I saw that exhibit and as I was reading it and learning from it, it really inspired me to think about the different ways in which religion is still such a positive force for good in society. So for example, its ability to inspire and to drive people to think deep questions, and to then innovate, and to also question, and to try to ask the deeper questions about their human experience and their human identity.
Yes.
And so for me, I think that religion is definitely still very important to society in terms of compelling people to find meaning, and that creating good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of feel like religion gives people a purpose, a push to want to do better, for stuff like that. So yeah.
I think, well, I don't know if society needs religion. I think it can benefit from it. From my perspective, most of the people in my life are not people of faith. Some, they may consider themselves vaguely spiritual, or as atheists or agnostic, and they're find their own sources of inspiration from other places outside of faith and outside of religion. For me, I find a lot of inspiration from within faith. And I think I can see throughout all of history and still today, it produces so much deeper thought, as you said, and artistic inspiration, musical inspiration. A lot of great works were inspired by people's faiths and the imagery that they drew from that. So I think that there still is, and there will always be, not to mention the aspect of community and how that binds people together. There will always be a place and a benefit to having religion and faith, but I don't know if it's something that we can say we need to have today.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Michael. I don't think that I don't believe that society needs religion to function, but I do think that different religions and different cultures can add to a more beautiful society and just enhance culture. I think that values are very important. The values that kind of correlate with religion, like you were saying, are what pursue people, and they're what inspires people, what drives people to do good and to make change. And I'm a Jewish studies minor, and I'm also pursuing a religious studies minor. So it's something that I have studied a lot, and something I'm really interested in learning about other cultures and other religions, and what their values are, and how they use that to shape positive change for the world.
No, I love what you guys are saying about how it just creates a very full experience. And I love what you're saying about the art and creative artistic expression, because this is a really niche fact, but the classical composer Bach, he used to write on his music or sign with solo del gloria, which means glory only to God.
Mm.
So it's showing like, oh, like faith does inspire like, artistic creation and, yeah. Yeah, any other thoughts on this?
You can live, thrive, everything as an individual, as a society without faith, but we've always had it. People want to believe, I think, in something. It's been with us throughout our evolution, throughout history, and I think that it adds to the fullness of the human experience.